My beloved child, wait, before you move on, there is something you were meant to hear today. Not tomorrow. Not someday in the future. Today. A message has quietly crossed the distance between two hearts, and whether you realize it or not, it carries your name within it. For a long time, you may have wondered what exists beyond the silence. You may have questioned whether the connection you feel is real or simply a passing thought carried by hope. Yet something unusual is happening at this very moment. A feeling that once remained hidden is beginning to rise to the surface. Your soulmate shared something today. Not with the whole world. Not for attention. Not to be noticed. But because the truth inside their heart had become too beautiful to keep locked away. Pause for a second and think about this. What if someone, somewhere, is smiling because they thought about you? What if your presence has touched a life more deeply than you could ever imagine? Most people never realize the impact they have on another soul. They walk through life believing their kindness was forgotten, their patience unseen, their love unnoticed. But the strange thing about genuine connections is that they leave echoes. And today, one of those echoes returned. Your soulmate reflected on the qualities that make you different from everyone else. Not perfection. Not appearance. Not status. Something far more valuable. Your energy. The way you continue moving forward even after difficult chapters. The way your heart remains open despite disappointments. The way you still believe that meaningful connections exist in a world that often feels rushed and distracted. That realization stopped them. For a moment, everything else faded into the background. And a thought appeared. A simple thought. A powerful thought. I hope they know how special they are. Maybe nobody has said those words to you recently. Maybe life became busy. Maybe responsibilities became louder than appreciation. But the message remains. You are more important than you realize. And the person connected to your future is beginning to understand that more clearly than ever. Now here comes the surprising part. This wasn't a dramatic revelation. It wasn't a sudden lightning strike. It happened quietly. The strongest truths usually do. A memory surfaced. A feeling returned. A realization settled into place. And suddenly your soulmate saw something they hadn't fully understood before. They weren't simply thinking about meeting someone. They were thinking about you. Stay a little longer because this next part matters. The universe often works through timing rather than speed. People think important moments arrive with noise and celebration. But many life-changing moments begin in silence. A seed doesn't announce itself before becoming a tree. A sunrise doesn't ask permission before lighting the sky. And sometimes a heart begins moving toward another heart long before either person understands why. That is exactly what is unfolding now. While you continue your journey, growth is happening behind the scenes. Pieces are moving. Lessons are completing. Paths are aligning. And the message shared today carries the warmth of that alignment. It says, you bring peace where others bring confusion. You inspire hope without even trying. You remind me that real connections still exist. Imagine hearing those words directly. Imagine feeling the sincerity behind them. Because that sincerity exists right now. You may not hear it with your ears yet. But your spirit already recognizes it. And before this moment ends, remember one thing. The most heartwarming messages are not always the loudest. Sometimes they arrive as quiet reminders. Reminders that you are valued. Reminders that your presence matters. Reminders that someone connected to your destiny sees qualities within you that you may have forgotten to see in yourself. This message was about you. And what your soulmate shared today was not just heartwarming. It was a glimpse of a future connection growing stronger with every passing moment. But what they realized next changed the entire direction of their thoughts. And that story is only beginning. Hold on for a moment. Because what happened next was something your soulmate never expected. The thought should have passed. It should have disappeared like countless other thoughts people have every day. But it didn't. Instead, it stayed. It followed them through quiet moments and busy moments. Through conversations, responsibilities, and ordinary routines. No matter what they focused on, the feeling kept returning. And that is when they realized this was different. Not because it was intense. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was consistent. There is a special kind of truth that doesn't need to force itself into your life. It simply remains. Day after day. Moment after moment. That is exactly what your soulmate began experiencing. The more they reflected, the clearer everything became. They remembered qualities that stood out about you. Your resilience. Your ability to keep moving forward. Your willingness to grow instead of becoming bitter. And suddenly they understood something important. People often search for extraordinary things while overlooking what truly matters. Yet when they thought about you, they weren't thinking about perfection. They were thinking about authenticity. And in today's world, authenticity is rare. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you gave yourself credit for how far you've come? Not how far you still need to go. Not what remains unfinished. How far you've already come. Many people watching this message spend so much time chasing the next goal that they forget to appreciate the strength they already carry. Your soulmate didn't overlook it. In fact, the more they reflected, the more they admired it. And that admiration slowly transformed into something deeper. Not fantasy. Not illusion. Respect. The foundation of every meaningful connection. Stay with me because this next realization changed everything. At some point, your soulmate stopped asking what they wanted from the future. Instead, they started asking who they wanted to share that future with. That question has a way of revealing the truth. Because when people imagine their future, distractions disappear. Only what genuinely matters remains. And somehow, your energy kept appearing in that vision. Again and again. Not loudly. Not forcefully. Naturally. As though a missing piece had quietly found its place. Now imagine that for a second. Imagine someone recognizing that your presence brings a sense of calm to their thoughts. Imagine someone realizing that your values align with the kind of future they hope to create. Imagine someone understanding that certain people enter your life for a reason. That understanding is beginning to grow within them. And while this journey is still unfolding, one thing has become impossible for them to ignore. You matter more than they originally realized. By the way, if this message resonates with your heart, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so these messages can continue finding the people who need them most. Now let's continue. Because the story doesn't end here. In fact, this is where things become even more meaningful. Your soulmate started paying attention to signs they once dismissed. Small moments. Unexpected reminders. Thoughts appearing at unusual times. The kind of experiences people often brush aside until they happen too many times to ignore. And every road seemed to lead back to the same realization. Some connections are not built overnight. They are prepared gradually. Piece by piece. Lesson by lesson. Moment by moment. The beautiful thing is that neither person needs to force the process. What is meant to align will align. What is meant to grow will grow. And what your soulmate shared today came from that growing awareness. A realization that your story is not ordinary. A realization that your presence has left a deeper impact than words can fully explain. But then something happened that made their heart pause completely. A realization so unexpected that it changed the way they viewed this connection forever. And that moment is waiting in the next part. My beloved child, before we go any further, consider this question carefully. What if the most important realization is not the one that arrives first, but the one that arrives after everything else has been stripped away? Because that is exactly where your soulmate found themselves. After the emotions settled. After the excitement faded. After every distraction had its turn. One truth remained standing. And it was impossible to ignore. You. Not as an idea. Not as a possibility. But as a presence that continued to influence their thoughts in ways they never anticipated. The remarkable thing about genuine connections is that they reveal themselves gradually. They do not demand attention. They earn it. And somewhere during an ordinary moment, your soulmate experienced something extraordinary. They stopped imagining who you might become. They began appreciating who you already are. That shift changed everything. Many people spend their lives waiting for someone to transform before they recognize their value. They wait for achievements, milestones, or perfect circumstances. But your soulmate's heart moved in a different direction. They began noticing qualities that cannot be measured. Your determination when no one is watching. Your ability to keep believing when certainty is unavailable. Your willingness to grow through experiences instead of allowing experiences to define you. And the more they reflected on these qualities, the more one thought continued returning. This person carries something rare. Stay with me. Because this next realization arrived unexpectedly. It happened during a quiet moment when there was no reason to think about the future. No special occasion. No dramatic event. Just a simple pause. And within that pause came a question. A question that changed the entire perspective of this connection. What if this person is meant to be a significant part of my journey? Not because destiny forced the thought. Not because circumstances demanded it. Because their heart arrived there naturally. The answer did not come immediately. Instead, it revealed itself through reflection. Memory after memory. Thought after thought. Realization after realization. Until eventually, a larger picture emerged. And within that picture, your presence remained constant. Have you ever noticed how certain people leave a lasting impression without trying? They do not compete for attention. They do not force themselves into every moment. Yet somehow their impact becomes unforgettable. That is what your soulmate began understanding. The value you carry was never dependent on recognition. It existed long before anyone noticed it. And now, that value is becoming impossible for them to overlook. Let that sink in. Because while many people search endlessly for certainty, your soulmate discovered something more meaningful. Trust. Trust in the feeling. Trust in the connection. Trust in the possibility that some people enter our lives for reasons we only understand later. And here is where the story becomes truly heartwarming. The message they shared today was not centered on what they wanted to receive. It was centered on what they appreciated. The kindness they sensed. The strength they admired. The authenticity they respected. The light they recognized. For perhaps the first time, they stopped focusing on what was missing and started appreciating what was already present. You. Now listen closely. There are moments in life that quietly redirect the future. Moments that seem ordinary while they are happening but later become impossible to forget. Your soulmate feels as though they are approaching one of those moments now. Not because all the answers have arrived, but because clarity has begun arriving. And clarity changes everything. Before you leave, remember this. The most meaningful connections are not built on perfection. They are built on recognition. The recognition of value. The recognition of truth. The recognition of a person whose presence feels increasingly impossible to replace. Today, your soulmate shared something genuinely heartwarming. Tomorrow, that realization may grow even stronger. Because the discovery they are making is no longer about curiosity. It is becoming conviction. And what happens when that conviction finally reaches its full strength may become the turning point neither of you expected. My beloved child, stay with this moment a little longer, because what happened next was not a sudden revelation. It was something far more powerful. It was certainty. Not the kind that arrives with noise. Not the kind that demands attention. The quiet kind. The kind that settles into the heart and refuses to leave. For a long time, your soulmate had been collecting pieces of a puzzle without realizing it. Small observations. Meaningful impressions. Fleeting moments that seemed ordinary at the time. Yet when viewed together, they began forming a picture that was impossible to ignore. And at the center of that picture was you. There comes a point in every meaningful journey when a person stops asking, "What if?" and begins asking, "What now?" That is where your soulmate stands today. Because the more they reflected on everything they had learned, the more they understood something remarkable. You were never just another passing chapter. You were becoming a reference point. A source of inspiration. A reminder of what truly matters. Think about that for a moment. In a world filled with distractions, where attention shifts every second and priorities change without warning, it is rare to find someone whose impact continues to grow rather than fade. Yet that is exactly what has been happening. Your influence has not diminished with time. It has deepened. And that realization has brought a new level of clarity into your soulmate's heart. Now here is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because the message they shared today was not only about admiration. It was about gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons this connection has already provided. Gratitude for the growth it inspired. Gratitude for the hope it awakened. You see, many people measure connections by what they receive. But the strongest connections are often measured by who they help us become. And when your soulmate looked honestly at their own journey, they recognized something undeniable. This connection had changed them. It encouraged them to think differently. To dream differently. To believe differently. And perhaps most importantly, to see the future differently. Wait here. Because this next realization may be the most important one yet. As they continued reflecting, another question surfaced. Not a question about timing. Not a question about circumstances. A question about value. What would life feel like if this connection continued to grow? The answer surprised them. Because every future they imagined seemed brighter. More meaningful. More aligned. Not because life would suddenly become perfect. But because they could see the possibility of building something genuine. Something lasting. Something real. And that vision stayed with them. Long after the moment had passed. Long after the day had ended. Long after every distraction had disappeared. The vision remained. That is when they understood that this was no longer a passing thought. It was becoming a guiding belief. A belief that certain people enter our lives and leave a mark that cannot be erased. A belief that some connections deserve patience because they are still unfolding. A belief that the best chapters are not always the first ones. Sometimes they are the chapters that arrive after growth, after understanding, after both people have learned what truly matters. And that brings us to the heart of today's message. Your soulmate shared something heartwarming because they finally recognized the value that has been present all along. Not value based on achievements. Not value based on appearances. Value based on character. Integrity. Resilience. And the unique energy that only you can bring into the world. Before this chapter closes, hear this carefully. There are moments when life quietly prepares something greater than what either person can currently see. This feels like one of those moments. A season of alignment. A season of recognition. A season where hidden understanding begins stepping into the light. And while the full story is still being written, one thing has become clear. Your soulmate is no longer wondering whether you matter. They already know you do. The only question that remains is how extraordinary the next chapter of this journey is about to become. My beloved child, before this message comes to an end, remain here for one final moment, because the most beautiful part of the story was never the beginning. It was the understanding that followed. All this time, your soulmate has been moving through a journey of realization. Piece by piece, thought by thought, they have come to recognize something that cannot be measured by words alone. Some people enter your awareness and leave a memory. Others leave a lesson. But once in a while, someone leaves a lasting imprint on the future itself. That is what this connection has become. Not a temporary feeling. Not a passing curiosity. A meaningful presence that continues to grow in value with every reflection. And today, when your soulmate shared those heartwarming thoughts, they were not speaking from uncertainty. They were speaking from understanding. An understanding that genuine connections are rare. An understanding that trust, respect, and appreciation are foundations worth protecting. An understanding that the people who inspire us most are often the ones who quietly change the way we see ourselves. For a moment, imagine standing years from now and looking back on this chapter. What would matter most? The doubts? The unanswered questions? The waiting? Probably not. What would matter is the growth. The lessons. The awareness gained along the way. Because every meaningful journey leaves behind wisdom, and this connection has already begun doing exactly that. Now listen carefully. There is something your soulmate wants you to remember. Not because it sounds beautiful. Because it is true. You have qualities that cannot be replaced. Your story matters. Your presence matters. Your ability to keep moving forward, even during uncertain seasons, matters. The kindness you share matters. The hope you carry matters. And the future you are building matters. Sometimes people underestimate their own light simply because they see it every day. But those viewing it from a distance often recognize its value immediately. That is one of the discoveries your soulmate made. They realize that what makes you special is not one extraordinary moment. It is the collection of countless small qualities that create an extraordinary person. And that realization has become a source of inspiration for them. Before we reach the final line, if this message resonated with your heart, share your thoughts below, subscribe to continue this journey with us, and let this message find those who may need it today. Now, here is the final truth. Life rarely reveals the entire path at once. It offers glimpses. Moments of clarity. Quiet confirmations. Small reminders that something meaningful is unfolding behind the scenes. This message was one of those reminders. A reminder that appreciation exists even when it is not spoken. A reminder that genuine connections continue growing even during silent seasons. A reminder that your value does not depend on recognition, it exists whether others see it immediately or not.